Welcome back to Lake Effect. I'm Bonnie North. It's great to have you with us. We realize the answer to this next question teeters on too much information, but we're going to ask anyway. Are you happy with your low-flow toilet? If not, you're not alone. It's not difficult to find people who think they herald the beginning of the end of our civilization, or others who think it's an idea with good intentions, but simply doesn't deliver. Comments like, if you have to keep flushing, then why have it at all? Or it wastes more water having to flush multiple times abound. Indeed, the early days of the low-flow toilet were met with skepticism and resistance that still surrounds them. Well, toilet engineers have responded with a new approach to design and testing in the hope that consumers will better embrace the low-flow idea. Over the summer, Lake Effect's Dan Harmon visited Wisconsin's own Kohler company and spoke with some design engineers there about what they're doing to further the technology.
My name's Rob Zimmerman. I'm the manager of engineering, water conservation, and sustainability at Kohler. I think there's a lot of concern in the marketplace about low-flow technology that really stems from the problems that the toilets had back in the 1990s when we went to 1.6 gallons per flush. But what Kohler's been able to do is to re-engineer the toilet really from the ground up in such a way that not only do these toilets flush better than the old inefficient toilets, you can use less water. So the standard we're moving towards today is 1.28 gallons or 20% less water.
Do you think that initially the push to go to a lower flow toilet, it came out ahead of the technology and maybe they should have waited a little bit longer?
Well, certainly back in the 1990s, the conversion from the old 3.5 gallon per flush toilets to 1.6 was done way too quickly. It was done by a federal mandate, and industry really only had 14 months to comply with that, and it was a major engineering project. What's happened this time is that this switch from the 1.6 to 1.28 has been done very much with industry's support and industry's guidance over a much longer time period. So we've really had an adequate time to engineer these products and improve their performance as we make them more water efficient.
Mike Marbach. My title is Product Manager for Toilets and Bidets.
What is the process of designing a toilet? Is it about looks? Is it about performance? Or how closely are you tracking what consumers want versus low-flow technology? Where does the process start?
The process for designing a toilet is actually a combination of all of those elements. We actually do look into consumer insights. We look into design trends. We also look into maybe some specific needs or new opportunities we find. Typically, we have certain design parameters around our new products, so we know we want, for a toilet, let's say, it to be a certain shape or style or have certain features. But then we also have an in-house design team that does all of our industrial design work, and they will actually do the creative process of determining what that product could look like. We go through a process where we review concepts. We start with often concepts on paper and narrow that down to a few selections, and then go through a process with our management team, and even our CEO, our chairman, Herb Kohler, is involved, and Mr. Kohler goes through and actually personally selects one of the design concepts.
Are the new technologies that are incorporated in the toilets, are these pretty much interchangeable with the actual way houses are constructed? Can you put new toilets where older ones have always been?
For the most part, toilets are very interchangeable with the ones that were being installed, years ago. You do have some exceptions, so there are certain things that you need to check for when replacing a toilet. One of them is called the rough-in. So the rough-in for a toilet is actually the distance of the outlet, or basically the hole in the floor, to the finished wall. One of the other things is we are incorporating products, toilets with electricity, seats with electricity. Most people do not have an electrical outlet behind their toilet. That's something that's very easy to add, but if you are going to purchase a product like a bidet seat, you will need to put that electrical outlet behind the toilet. Other than that, there isn't really much else you need to worry about when replacing a toilet.
Now, you mentioned bidet function and heated seats. This makes me think of some pretty much over-the-top Japanese designs, in the multi-$1,000 category. You can control your lighting and music and turn it into an experience. So Is that something, I know Kohler has something that's a pretty new and expensive toilet. Is that just for show, or are these kinds of technologies actually like a show car or something like that that's actually going to be an indicator of future technologies?
Yeah, that's a great question. Our high-end products like that are targeted as luxury products. So this new toilet we just introduced, the Kohler Nbna toilet, is a toilet that we created because we wanted to really create the world's best toilet. That was what we set out to do from very early on. There's a lot of innovation in this product, and it gives you the ability to do a lot of different things like you mentioned, with playing music, with controlling bidet settings, controlling heating settings, lighting. Now, with that being said, we do offer a very wide range or a very wide progression of products in our line. So if something like our Kohler Nbna toilet is at too high of a price point, we have our C3 toilet seat. The C3 seat can be put on most existing toilets, and it gives you that bidet functionality. It gives you a heated seat. You get a deodorizer. You get a whole lot with that seat for a much lower price. From there, we are looking into doing other things in the future. So if we see that people really like certain elements of these products, you very well could see them in much lower price points in future products that we haven't come out yet with. So part of this is being innovative and seeing what we can do that hasn't been done before. And another part of it is servicing a luxury market that definitely, is seeking products like this.
My name is Ben Miller. I'm the manager of sanitary product engineering. There are about 4 technologies primarily used in the Americas to get the water to move through the toilet into the trap and then carry it into the drain line. The first technology and most common is the gravity flush, where it just pulls it down with gravity and forces it through. The second is a power, where you actually utilize the line pressure in a higher pressure building, for example, and it just forces it straight through the system, just opens a valve and it forces the water through. The third is a pump, where you actually utilize a pump to take water that would otherwise flow through at gravity speeds and force it through at a higher speed. And the final is pressure light. And pressure light has a tank of plastic that's inside the vitreous tank, and as the water fills it, it uses that line pressure to pressurize the air within that tank, and then when you flush it, all that air pressure releases and forces the water back through the system at higher speeds and velocities than it would be with gravity. So you can utilize less water with a pressure light system than you can with a regular gravity system.
Let's talk about testing. I think that's very intriguing, and just given the complaints that I just hear generally, overhearing people, I think it's probably one of the most widely complained about thing, I think, on homeowners, is they don't like their toilets. And I don't think they mean the style. I think it's more the functionality of the toilet. So has testing gone up a few notches in the past 10 years?
Absolutely. Testing has increased substantially. There are several different levels of testing. There are the code requirements, which are the minimum required to sell products in this country. But some of the most interesting tests are outside of the code agencies by companies like MAP or Veritech, where we actually have to flush. It's essentially a miso paste, which has the same consistency of things that you might otherwise find in a toilet, encapsulated in a flexible material, and we have to flush certain quantities of them related to what consumers are able to put in the bowl. So, for example, we know that consumers can put about 130 grams worth of waste in their toilet, and we test our toilets to substantially higher than that. In fact, many of the toilets that we've released over the last 3 years are capable of handling 1,000 grams. So if you think about 130 gram typical, that's what somebody's going to put in there, and we're handling 7 times that amount. So yes, we do hold ourselves to substantially higher standards than we're required to by code requirement, or even we're required to remove what people are putting in there. And the goal is to have plug-free installations. You don't want people, the last thing we want to do as consumers is get that plunger out, and so our testing is designed around avoiding that at all costs.
When the current mode of testing, if you will, was brought on, were there kind of shocking or unexpected answers to questions before? Like, was previous testing inadequate, do you think?
I think over time the differences in testing procedures have better aligned them with consumers. So if you back up 10 to 15 years, we did tests that you might pass it, but it might not mean satisfaction to a customer. And so what changed is we introduced things that very much approximated what consumers were putting into their bowls. So we did studies, we looked at what industry studies were available on it, et cetera, and we understood that people put toilet paper, light waste, and what we call bulk waste into the toilets, and then we designed test protocols as an industry around capturing those three things specifically. So if you backed up 10 to 15 years, we would say we're in much better shape than we probably were with respect to customer needs. And if you look at the test that we utilize now, I think when we say it's A-OK, it really is in terms of the customer.
Do you have testing panels that can try these on for size for real?
Absolutely. Within the company, we actually have a program where employees can take home products that aren't yet released to the market such that they can evaluate them and provide feedback to the development teams as to whether they hit the mark or if there are any issues that they need to address before they hit the actual customers. So before any product actually is released for shipment by Kohler, it's been evaluated by consumers in the home environment.
Okay, we're back with Ben in the testing lab. Can you give us basically a walkthrough as to what is on this table?
So we talked earlier about there being multiple different media that we use to determine the success or the performance of our toilets. What we have here on the table is a sampling of them that cover the various customer expectations that we have. Customers expect their toilet to remain clean, so we have a whole bunch of plastic balls that we use, and when you flush the toilet, all of those have to be removed, and that's an indicator of whether or not after the flush you look in there and it looks like it's all clean water, or if you have to flush it again. The next thing we have on the table is a whole bunch of bean paste wrapped in essentially condoms. And this is an approximation of what people put in their toilets from a bulk waste performance standpoint. And we have to remove a certain number of those for it to be successful from our standpoint. And also, this is a published industry value. So all toilets that are, at least in the retail environment, have to have a score based on this test. And the third is the same media, except it's not wrapped in a condom, and it is another approximation of bulk removal. And this is actually for water sense. Water sense is one of the ways in which we indicate that our products perform at a low level but at an acceptable performance. So it used to be that you would just have to use or prove that you had enough water usage, that you didn't exceed a certain amount. Now we have to show that we don't exceed a certain amount and it performs adequately. So it forces us and our competitors to really deliver on both avenues. Low water, good performance.
Can you tell us then what is an acceptable number, of each one of these individually wrapped packages? Like what's the success rate, I guess?
All right, so the amount that can be removed by each given product differs by its technology, but what we have in front of you is 20 50-gram cased bean paste logs, and they're about 4 inches long. The average person, based on studies that are really well accepted, uses might put about 3 of these, or the equivalent of 3, and on average per use of the toilet. Our highest performing toilets actually will flush all of them at once, which is all 20. So, this is the granule test.
It passed with flying colors. No granules left. Which toilet is this?
This is the Flare, so it's a Wellworth variant, which is actually a Flare. There are 3 Wellworth variants, right? There's the Classic, the Flare, and the Cavata. It's the newest wholesale variant of the Wellworth. So the Wellworth is a design that goes back to 1927. It's been refreshed several times over those years, most recently in 2010. And it is the gold standard within toilets from Kohler Company. So the standard requires that of the 2,500 granules that you start with, that you have to end up with no more than 125, and we had 0. So just an indication of how good of a performer it is.
I think that was impressive enough. So that was the granule test. So now we're actually going to work with the packets of miso.
Right. This is the case miso test. So if you remember, 3 of these is approximately what the average user might put in, and we're just going to throw 10 in for good measure, and we'll see how it does. Okay, so we got them all out.
And that exceeds the standard that's been set. Is that true?
So it's an industry standard, and you can score anywhere you like on it. You can score anywhere from 250 up to 1,000. A lot of our most recent products, including this one, are certified to 1,000. So what we just tested is 500, just to prove that it does work. But there's no code or standard that requires that you pass a certain amount of case miso. It's a voluntary standard to which we all compete for.
All right, so we just tested a kind of just a standard gravity toilet, right? So now, which performed well. Yep. So now the next one in line here is the pressure light toilet. What's different? I mean, looking inside the tank, I mean, it's very different from the the typical ball cock assembly that you would see in a regular toilet. So what's different in here?
So the outside of the toilet's going to look the same. It's going to have the same piece of vitreous. It's going to have the same handle, but inside the tank, instead of having a flush valve that's a canister that's lifted up and all the water rushes past it, it has a tank, a plastic tank. And that tank serves to store energy between flushes, and then when you hit the flush actuator, it rushes all that water out through the trap. So it's a different toilet function or platform technology, but it delivers the same end result.
And we're going to test this one as well.
So we're going to try to flush 10 of these cased meso logs down this pressure light. So this drop zone is important. You don't just want to drop things anywhere, because people don't just drop things anywhere. They drop it in a pretty defined area. And by having some protocol like this, we assure consistency not only across the individual toilet testers, but across all the different manufacturers.
Okay, well, this one made a much simpler task out of it than the last one.
Yeah, the ability to store the energy does make it easier to evacuate the bowl, at least in terms of time. It's a faster flush than you might experience on a gravity, but it is ever so slightly louder.
And to reiterate, there's no additional electricity. This is just pressure that's from the water line.
That's correct. And when we test these to certify them, we have to test them at multiple line pressures. We have to test them on multiple different bowls, and we have to test them several different times. You can't just do one flush and declare victory. So we would have to, if we were certifying these, we'd be witnessed by somebody who would say, yep, you did it all appropriately, you did pass, and you did it a certain number of times. So they're high bars to pass.
Thank you very much, Ben.
You're welcome.